What rare phobia do you have and people refuse to believe it? Story 1. I can't deal with anything eye-related. I can't use contacts or put in eye drops. I have to look away if others are doing it. Even watching my girlfriend put on makeup gets me. I can watch gory horror scenes, but the second eyes are involved, I'm a total baby. Story 2. Not rare in how often it's mentioned, but needles. Like an actual needle phobia. Stop telling me it doesn't hurt that much. I'm well aware that's not what a phobia is. When I was 12, I had a perfectly healthy tooth pulled without anesthetic, and the dentist had to twist. It's not the pain. Answer: same. Mine is a bit more specific, however. Vaccines, yes, but anytime a blood test is needed and they start touching me with a tourniquet, my blood pressure drops, get ringing in my ears, lose my vision, just goes black, sweat uncontrollably, and people say they've never seen a more pale skin color on a healthy living being when it happens. Essentially, the vasovagal reaction in the worst way. I also have piercings and tattoos, and Novocaine shots in my mouth for dental procedures are all fine. I have not had a traumatizing medical experience to link it to either. I fully second the don't. Tell me it doesn't hurt because it has absolutely nothing to do with it. I can't explain how little control I have over it. Zero control, actually. I have done everything. Looking away, using headphones to listen to music or breathing apps for distraction, laying down. Still happens no matter what position I'm in, etc. After years of ignoring health maintenance involving blood draws, my primary care doc put a note in my record about the severity, and I have a RX for 2 doses of Xanax anytime I need a draw. It's been the only thing that allows me to not have the reaction. For those that assume it's a quick passing out or it's not a prolonged event, I can assure you it knocks out my entire day, both with and without the Xanax. Without it, I'm physically and mentally exhausted from experiencing that reaction like I just ran a marathon. With medication, I go home and sleep for the next 4-6 hours. I have to not only schedule the appointment, but also the ride to and from the appointment because I'm unable to drive from the heavy dose. It's not a silly thing. Please take those with this reaction seriously. I had one RN who didn't one time, and I ended up on the floor with 3 RNs around me. That's not an incident report you want to write up or witness. Story 3. Agoraphobia. People think I don't have it because I'll never put myself in any situation that might induce it. So I generally ask them who they think they are to think I'd put myself in any position to feel stuck in my phobia, just to lift their doubts. And then I avoid them like the plague. If people don't believe it and ask you to prove it, they're a piece of shoot. If you're someone that doesn't believe someone has a phobia of something simply because they've never been exposed to it in front of you to see their reaction, stop. You're a jerk. Find a healthier hobby than making everyone else miserable. Story 4. When I was a kid, I was so afraid of water that I had to be washed by force until about 7 or 8 years old. I have no clue as to why that was. Now it's all fine, swimming and everything, as if it never happened. Story 5. Dinosaurs. When I was around 5, I had untreated anxiety. One night while having an anxiety attack, I went crying to my parents to soothe me. When I walked into the TV room, they were watching Jurassic Park, right at the T-Rex in the rain scene. I watched in stunned, anxiety-riddled silence as the T-Rex ate the guy in the toilet. If that hadn't cemented a lifelong fear of dinos in me, a very similar thing happened maybe a year later, but with Godzilla. Answer: this happened to me with Alien when I was 5. My mother was watching it, and I happened to walk in when the guy gets ripped in half and his legs fly off into space. I spent years unable to sleep, seeing the xenomorph standing in my doorway, terrified, and even in my mid-30s, I still picture it when I'm in the dark, and it makes me panic a little. Oddly enough, I saw Jurassic Park in theaters when I was 4 and loved it. I was obsessed with the raptors and thought they were adorable, and I had an imaginary pack that I raised from eggs. Now when I get freaked out about the xenomorph, I picture my raptor pack attacking it and defending me. Perhaps you could borrow them to defend you from the T-Rex. They're very friendly and protective. Story 6. I have arachnophobia. Not a rare phobia, but for context, it only came about since moving to the Midwest and developed a fear of ticks. Now even those harmless house spiders freak me out. My friends keep telling me I'm being irrational, but I can't shake it. Story 7. I get extremely uncomfortable and physical shudders from seeing and/or discussing tongues. Even during writing this, the thought of them is enough to start the strongest feelings of disgust to form throughout my body and mind. Story 8. I have terrified of bacteriophages. I have nightmares of giant 3-foot-tall ones running after me. I always wake up crying when it happens. I don't know how to explain this fear to anyone, and people info-tell just think I'm crazy. Story 9. Sleeping with objects above my head. I just can't help but be worried it will fall and it'll die or be severely injured no matter the object. I think I watched too many disaster movies as a kid with earthquakes shaking the house and things falling from the walls or ceilings, lol. Story 10. I fear that at any moment a space disaster happens without warning. Like the sun exploding out of nowhere, Earth stops spinning all of a sudden, Earth colliding with another planet, or an asteroid eliminate me or something. Story 11. I'm afraid of climbing. I'm fine with heights, but it's the getting up there that freaks me out. The steeper the climb, the more scared I am, so normal stairs are mostly fine, but I dislike ladders. In gym class, whenever we had to use the climbing wall, I'd shake and cry from the fear. Eventually, my teachers learned to just let me sit on climbing wall days. Story 12. Moist clumps of hair, like in a shower drain. Those fudge lint sock condom things people put on their washing machine emptying hose. I fudge die if I see it. Like why? Just let it go down the drain. Let the city deal with it. What are you saving it for? Do you have a loom? Are you making the world's most disgusting shirt? Story 13. I don't know if phobia is the right word, but severe aversion maybe? Body odor. And yes, that includes you people who try to mask body odor with cologne and perfume. Some people refuse to believe that my sense of smell is that good. F you. It is, and I am repulsed by you. Story 14. Police. I get very nervous around the police. I think it's because I know they're armed and have the power to arrest people. I dislike getting in trouble and always do my best to follow the rules, but always paranoid I've done something to draw their attention. Also, I haven't experienced trauma because of the police. If anyone was wondering. Story 15. Unsure if it's a phobia or just because I'm a pretty anxious person anyways, but I have a pretty bad relationship with time. I'm constantly stressing about it, to the point it sometimes ruins my ability to enjoy the day. I do try not to think about it, but I'll always end up looking at a clock to see how much time has passed, and every time I check I'm about to check, I feel panic, like I'm about to faint or something. Story 16. Dads, I absolutely despise fake or half-dads. Either it's a child you care about or not. You can't be halfway committed or step if you are then clearly state to the child, I am dad's girlfriend, or I am mom's boyfriend. Don't pretend to be a parental figure if you're not going to be around long term. I don't respect these kind of people. Story 17. Buttons make me feel uncomfortable. I can cope with shirt buttons, but the thought of touching big, shiny plastic ones makes me feel queasy. I don't know how rare it is, but it has a name: Phobia. Story 18. Fear of ladders, not heights. I have a nice old triangular-shaped tower. It's made of metal and quite tall. The previous owners left it from when they used a TV antenna. I climb up there, no problem, to adjust my scanner antennas I have mounted on the tower. No fear whatsoever. Whenever I climb up a ladder, I get to the third or fourth step and get an overwhelming feeling of dreadfulness, like I'm going to fall. Anything I climb, high, needs to be fixed to the structure I'm climbing, or I get an unreasonable and irrational fear. Story 19. Mascots, or people in similar costumes. My parents would drag me to see the Easter Bunny or Santa, and I would be sobbing. Even still, when I see a mascot or something similar, my fight or flight response kicks in. Story 20. I could not drive over bridges as a teenager. My school was quite far and across the river, but there was a little car ferry you could take. I took that, even though it took longer. It was that way for a long time until one night was going out with friends and I was following them. Pre-cell phone, so you just had to follow. They must have driven me over every bridge there was. I went from absolutely freaking out to more or less being okay with it. However, if traffic is bad and we're stopped on the bridge and you can feel it bouncing, I still shudder. Story 21. Photophobia, which isn't an actual fear phobia. I have an extreme visual sensitivity to light. I get so much BS about it from people, not only BC they haven't heard of it, but also because of the medical name. Story 22. I am so disturbed by belly buttons, specifically my own. For years growing up, I could not touch it, and I could barely look at it, and just thinking about it sent me shuddering. I think it might have something to do with adults sticking their fingers in it when I was little. Not in like a weird way, but in a "you're an adorable little kid." I am tickle attacking with their tummy sticking out kind of way, which always really bothered me. But yeah, for a really long time I couldn't touch it, so it would get nasty BCs. I didn't clean out the lint and stuff collecting in there, but we're way past that part. Last now lol. If the change had something to do with my sensory issues getting better, but I can deal with it for the most part now, though I'm still uncomfortable. Story 23. I don't know if it's rare, but beeswasp, sec. My sister and I broke a hornet's nest when I was a year or two old and I got covered in them. Don't have a memory of it, but my subconscious remembers. It's not as bad around bees anymore as long as they don't get too close, but wasps are still public enemy number one. Just the sound of them buzzing triggers a fight-or-flight response. I've had full-blown panic attacks when they've gotten into the house, and no one else was around to eliminate them for me. And I guess it's not so much that people refuse to believe it, more than they get exasperated. Whenever I react to one being too close, yeah, I know it's probably not going to sting me, but my brain doesn't care about facts and logics. It has identified that thing as a threat and acts according. Fun fact, though. The only time I've been stung since that incident is when I stepped on a dead bee while I was walking barefoot in my kitchen in the dark. Story 24. Goats. I know it's a weird phobia, but their eyes are terrifying. Their horizontal pupils scare the living saint out of me. It's an irrational fear. I've scuba dived and met octopuses with similar horizontal eyes, and I wasn't afraid. But somehow, goats are terrifying. I can't explain it. Story 25. Neurosurgery. I mean, think about it. The brain is everything that you are. It's the closest thing to your soul in physical form, and people can literally carve up your soul with a knife, and most of the time, you're kept awake while they do it. It's so common that it's done on an industrial scale. And if even the tiniest thing goes wrong, or in the case of a big resection, even if everything goes right, you're disabled in some of the most terrible ways possible. and there's no hope of it ever improving because the brain doesn't regenerate. Story 26. Not me, but I had a friend who is afraid of inflated party balloons, which I learned about the hard way. One time for my birthday, my GF at the time had arranged for my housemate to let her and 2 friends in, and they spent a few hours blowing up balloons and filling my bedroom. The next day, my neighbor, the friend in question, asked me about the surprise my friends left in my bedroom. Told her to go check. She screamed and ran back home crying, which I did find odd. Wasn't until an hour later that her BF called me a cunt for making her go into a balloon-filled room. Only after I looked very confused did he ask if I knew about her phobia. I did not. Story 27. Not particularly rare, but usually when I tell people I'm a germaphobe, they underestimate the level of discomfort I have with germs. Recently, I was at the airport and accidentally touched this random person's phone because I thought it was mine. After that, I couldn't get to the bathroom and didn't have any access to my preferred soap since my flight was boarding soon. I was starving though, so my sister handed me a couple hand wipes which I used, but even after that, I felt my body starting to have a panic attack while trying to eat a tiny bag of Cheez-Its because all I could think about was how I touched that phone for 10 seconds. Story 28. I'm scared of blood. I've passed out and almost lost consciousness a handful of times since childhood through adulthood from seeing blood. Granted, it's not every kind of blood in sight. Mostly in medical context, or films where it's slow and torturous. I do not like to be reminded that I'm a fragile water balloon. The sight of them, or thinking about them running in my veins, feeling my pulse gave me panic attacks up to the point that it's embarrassing, and I'm pretty sure some people genuinely think I'm just attention-seeking. Story 29. Escalators. I had a traumatic experience on one, and I still have a physical anxiety response when I get on a fast-moving downward escalator. I thought it would go away over time, but 20 years later, it hasn't subsided. Story 30. Dead insects. I never eliminate so much as a mosquito with my bare hands. I can eliminate very small moths with a shoe or a vacuum cleaner after we had 3 invasions of these pests eating my clothes, 2x, or my food, 1x. But if there is a dead insect of any kind on my desk, I have to leave the room. If there is a vacuum cleaner available, on a good day I can vacuum them, but without touching them with the tube and without watching the moment they are sucked into the cleaner. A few years ago, we cohabitated with a wasp's nest in our bedroom. I can live with the TRD live ones. I dread the dead ones, or the ones fighting for passing and dying in front of me. Story 31. Trypophobia. Not all kinds of hole clusters, for example. Beehive cells are a common trigger for this phobia, but they don't bother me. But smaller, tighter hole clusters, especially more organic-shaped ones. I know beehives are literally organic, but their workmanship is rather industrial-looking. Just freak me out badly. I start itching and get terrible intrusive thoughts, as well as just a general feeling of fear, repulsion, horror. I think it bothers the pestilence and infection part of my brain because it reminds me of maggoty, fetid meat. I can literally barely type this because just the recall has me itching. Story 32. I have thalassophobia. Mine is so bad, I can't even swim in pools or venture underwater in video games. The amount of times I get, but it's just a bit of water, or it's a game. How can you be afraid of pixels? Story 33. Toilets. High cistern. Toilets' black toilet seats are the worst. Higher than usual water level, European, is also a no. I did so much damage to myself as a kid by holding my pee. Then as an adult from not hydrating enough at work, cause their toilet was safe. Story 34. Submechanophobia, machinery underwater, specifically underwater animatronics. Also, a fear of blood draws. I have to get blood tests every 3 to 6 months, and I have to take anxiety medication the night before. Story 35. I can't touch or be super close cotton wool. It's squeaky and makes me feel hot, and I get kind of like tunnel vision. If it ever gets mentioned, people inevitably try to find some and proceed to squash it next to my face and then gauge my reaction. Story 36. Down escalators. I'm fine going up, but I just can't go down. I think it's because the step is moving away from me, and I'm frightened it'll fall. It stems from when I was little. My parents were watching the local news, and a child was wearing wellies, and they got caught in the machinery when he didn't step off quickly enough. Strangely, a good friend and I were talking about this one day, and he said, "You aren't going to believe this, but that was me." Story 37. Not rare, but I'm scared of water. I can't be in boats or swim in water that is not clear without freaking out. I get scared in pools if I am alone. Even in video games, I am terrified of submerging my character underwater. Story 38. Talking into phones, radios, speakers, etc. IDK what it is. It seemed to just develop around the age of 18, where I would burst into tears if a phone was ringing and nobody immediately answered it. Through constant exposure, I've managed to mostly get over it. I still feel uncomfortable and stressed, but I can deal with it now. I do always keep my phone on silent though. My uncle has a phobia of buttons, like he could never wear a shirt with buttons because it just repulsed him. Story 39. Touching hands. Everyone tells me it's all in my head or that I'm just being dramatic. Haha. The hands themselves don't bother me. What I dislike is the sensation of fingerprints. I feel them as very large, as if they rub against and sink into my own fingerprints. I've been in situations where, when I touch someone else's hand and their fingerprints brush against mine, I want to erase that sensation. I want to burn my hand. I want to cry and scream because of what I feel, and I rub my hand or breathe deeply to calm myself down. Story 40. I've had bouts of casadastrophobia, which is an irrational fear of falling into the sky, especially at night. It's worse if I'm laying on my back. Yes, I know it's impossible, but it's very similar to the fear of vertigo if you were to look down off of a tall building. It sucks. Story 41. Large moles on people's faces make me feel very uneasy on a physical level, and it usually takes a month or so of hanging out with that kind of person until my internal alarm goes off. I dislike it, but can't control it. Story 42. Arachnophobia. It's obviously extremely well known, but no one believes how serious it is for me. I'm not just uncomfortable around them or grossed out by them. I can't even type out the word because reading it makes my mind go insane. If I see one, I will avoid going in that room for at least a week and think about it and search for one every time I enter the room for the next month. If one gets on me, I will be screaming for an hour straight. Every time I close my eyes after, I will picture my mouth is filled with them, or my blood is just millions of them. I am so paralyzed with fear when I see them that I cannot eliminate it or even cover it. I can't even vacuum them up. It's genuinely so distressing for me to see one that I would legitimately prefer someone breaking into my home over seeing one of those little devilish creatures in it. Story 43. Moths, and to a lesser extent, butterflies. I'm terrified of both, but I can tolerate being outside and there being butterflies around as long as they aren't near me. Moths, I can't be near at all. If I'm in the house on my own and there is a moth in the room, He'll shut the door and will refuse to go in that room until there's another person to get rid of the moth. I can't have my windows open at night during the summer in case one gets in. Once I refused to stay in a BB because there was a moth in the hallway outside the bedroom we were given. I can't explain it. I have this irrational fear they're going to get into my ears somehow and take over my brain, or will get stuck in my ear canal and flap around. I know they can't hurt me, and it annoys me when people say, "I'm overreacting to them." It's the way they look and the way they move. They're sinister and creepy, especially the ones with eyes on their wings. I'm nauseous just writing about them, shudders. Story 44. Agrostophobia is a fear of grass in general. I'm only afraid of tall grass, but that's the closest that it can be defined that I'm aware of. I absolutely cannot force myself to walk through an area where the ground cover of any kind is taller than the shoes I'm wearing. Freaks me out. I'll go a mile around the long way to avoid walking through a 20 ft patch of it. Story 45. I'm mycophobic. I will cry and scream if I have to touch a mushroom in the outdoors or clean out something with mold, especially those pancake-looking mushrooms on trees, or the weird ones that like ears, the jelly ones that look like nets. No. The only thing I can tolerate is clean, cut mushrooms from the store, and only certain kinds. I'm still not a fan of eating them though. Story 46. When I was a small child, I was terrified of the moon, but only when it was a crescent moon. Full moon was fine. I still cannot fully explain why, but I think it just seemed evil-looking to me, like a big creepy grin in the sky that followed you wherever you walked or drove. It was always there, leering down at you. I used to make my parents close all the blinds when I knew the moon was going to be crescent. I'm pretty sure looking back I should have been assessed for autism. Haha. Story 47. Hair. I know it's insane. I am disgusted and so freaked out by hair that's not attached to someone. I can't touch my own hair out of the drain without some layers of paper towel. A pube or a leg hair in the bathroom from my husband makes me want to puke. Random hair in a public sink? I'll have nightmares about it that night. Story 48. C.A. Everyone giggles like it's not a wasp silly and shoot, and I fudge dislike them and do not want them near on me. When I was a kid, I woke up to my whole ceiling covered in them, and they were everywhere. Apparently, some kind of nest in the attic opened up in my ceiling light. Story 49. You probably heard the Ladybug song as a kid. It's a terrifying song for a kid. Your house is on fire. Your children are alone. I recommend listening to this song again when you are adult enough to handle it.